Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Doreen here on Thursday morning, January the 4th. We have a lot to talk about this morning. I want to first start off by taking a look at the longer term situation with respect to the stratospheric warming event. We have a weekend winter storm headed for the Mid-Atlantic region, and it continues to favor the interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic region for snow accumulations. It looks like a mix in the big cities along I-95 from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City. That kind of a mixture will certainly put a cap on snow accumulations in the metro regions. We have a powerhouse storm coming next Tuesday, Wednesday time frame that will have a big impact all the way from the Midwest, the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. It looks like it'll likely produce a lot of heavy rainfall in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S., at least along coastal sections. Interior accumulating snows also likely, and one of the other factors that will definitely be important for this Tuesday, Wednesday event will be the wind. Potentially damaging winds, power outages, unfortunately, certainly look like they'll be on the table in that whole region from the Midwest to the Northeast U.S., including the Mid-Atlantic and Great Lakes. Again, we're talking Tuesday into Wednesday time frame. Very active weather pattern going forward. There has been some intense cold around the world over the past couple of weeks. We've talked about the stratospheric warming event. This is a loop of the temperatures at the stratospheric level, 10 millibars, way up there in the atmosphere. The way to interpret this is the polar region right here in the northern part of the hemisphere. You can see the South America right here, North America showing up right here, Africa right here. But again, this is the polar region of the northern hemisphere. Stratospheric warming actually began late November and continues right now. Talked about the last few videos how there's kind of been a secondary burst of the warming in the upper part of the atmosphere. A couple of weeks ago, there was some of the coldest temperatures in a long time across China. Just in the past couple of days, some of the coldest temperatures in some 25 years in Scandinavian countries. In fact, Sweden had a report of, I believe it was about minus 49 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius, pretty similar at those levels. Again, close to minus 50 degrees, the coldest temperature in 25 years in the entire country of Sweden over the past couple of days. And it looks like this secondary burst right here can have an impact on this side of the North Pole later this month. There certainly continue to be signs of some intense cold making it to the North America side of the pole later in the month, certainly around mid part of January. And it looks like indeed the western part of Canada, the western part of the U.S. will be first affected by potential intense cold by the middle of January. Pretty likely that at least some of that very cold air works its way all the way to the eastern seaboard. You know, intense cold and dry air is the most dense kind of air we have. So once it gets on the move on the North America side of the pole, it's kind of hard to slow it down sometimes. It works its way south and east. Again, very dense air when you're dealing with cold, dry air. The lightest air, warm and humid, but this is the opposite. And again, it's kind of hard to stop it once it makes that move to the south and east. It certainly can be modified as it crosses the still unfrozen Great Lakes, for example, or the Appalachian Mountains, modified by the time it reaches the eastern seaboard. But something we'll monitor certainly next week is the possibility of intense cold air working its way into Canada and the U.S. Well, let's take a look at the 0Z run of the GFS. This is the operational or deterministic run of the GFS from last night at 0Z. Let's start off with the North America view, looking at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies, and we'll see some of that cold, intense cold air showing up by the middle part of January. First of all, starting off the day here on Thursday, the 4th of January, a lot of colder than normal air across the eastern U.S. and a colder than normal air mass seen here up across western and northwestern Canada going into Alaska. Now, let's move forward here And first we'll take a look at, we get back to near normal or even slightly above normal by the upcoming weekend. And again, that'll likely result in a mixture, not all snow in the big cities along the I-95 corridor, but there'll be near normal or even above normal temperatures just aloft that will have an impact on precipitation type this weekend in the Mid-Atlantic region. Again, favoring snow accumulations, interior sections to the north and west of I-95. We'll get into that later in the video discussion. Now, let's move forward here into the latter part of the weekend. Colder than normal air across the Mid-Atlantic on the heels of that weekend storm system. And then we have this powerhouse storm that will cause a surge of milder air up along the eastern seaboard. This is the forecast map for Tuesday evening. And this storm system, several days out, looks like it could cause some power outages in the eastern half of the nation because the pressure gradient between the primary low, which will head up towards the Great Lakes, and strong high pressure over southeastern Canada will be intense. That pressure gradient will be very strong, likely leading to some very strong winds, potentially damaging winds, especially along coastal sections, let's say from the Mid-Atlantic up to the northeastern part of the nation. Again, we're talking Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. Notice this quite impressively cold air mass here by the middle of next week across the western part of Canada, and that starts to slide south and east. Again, this kind of intense Arctic air, very cold, very dry, very dense. Once it starts to make a move, it's kind of hard to slow it down in its advance to the south and east. Doesn't necessarily guarantee it'll make it all the way to the eastern seaboard, but chances are, I would say, better than 50-50 that at least some of this intense cold makes it all the way to the eastern seaboard. Let's see what this particular GFS model run does. By the way, this powerhouse storm system headed to the eastern half of the nation Tuesday, Wednesday does not usher in that intense cold. It waits for another storm system later on into the middle part of January. Here we're out to January 13th, getting to the middle part. And now watch this cold air start to make its way into the eastern U.S. Again, very, very intense cold. Now keep in mind, this is the middle part of January, almost, statistically speaking, climatologically speaking, the coldest time of the winter season. So you get some snow cover, you get into the middle and latter part of January, and if you're 20, 25, 30 degrees below normal, that is some intense cold, and that looks like it's on the way for western Canada, north central, northwestern part of the U.S., and again, quite likely to make its way all the way down south and east. Again, look at that. A very dense air working its way to the south and east, and we have a consistent pattern here we'll talk about in a moment of the teleconnection indices known as the North Atlantic Oscillation and Arctic Oscillation sliding well into negative territory over the next week or two, and that is typically associated with blocking that sets up over places like Greenland, and that again will keep kind of a supportive atmospheric pattern for getting cold air into the central and eastern U.S. Let's go a little bit farther in time, and here we go all the way out into the middle part of January. Very cold across much of the nation. Well, before we take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps, again using the operational version of the 0Z GFS, let's indeed take a look at those teleconnection indices. This is the Arctic Oscillation forecast by the European model going all the way out towards the middle part of January, and indeed it slides deeper and deeper into negative territory. This is the AO, and here is the NAO. It's closely related cousin, the North Atlantic Oscillation. It too slides farther and farther down into negative territory. When these two indices slide into negative territory and remain in negative territory this time of the year in the winter season, especially the latter half of the winter season, they are usually well correlated with very strong blocking over places like Greenland, and that in turn tends to favor a colder, stormier pattern for the central and eastern states. Indeed, both of these appear to be headed into a pretty deep negative territory. Now we'll see how that translates in terms of the to the 500 millibar pattern here in terms of blocking or high pressure ridging higher heights than normal over places like Greenland. Just take a look at this particular part of North America as we go through these maps. First of all, beginning of the day here, let's go to the beginning of the day here, right here. There are a couple of systems in the eastern U.S., weak systems right now. They'll kind of phase together off the mid-Atlantic coast, well off the mid-Atlantic coast later tonight into the day on Friday, and then move up to the area northeast of Finland, and that in turn will help to cause a little bit of a block over southeastern Canada, and kind of a correlated high pressure will build into southeastern Canada, and that will help to maintain some cold air for the weekend event in the northeast U.S., in the mid-Atlantic, especially the interior mid-Atlantic. But let's move forward here, and first of all, we have the weekend event right here kind of showing up as in, this has been pretty consistent, maybe two different systems here. This is now the Saturday morning forecast map, a little bit of a wave here and another one there, and they caused the weekend event in the mid-Atlantic region right here, and that moves out. And just looking upstream, we have an active pattern certainly over the next couple of weeks. It's an ongoing active pattern here. This is the powerhouse system I talked about earlier, coming our way to the eastern half of the nation for Tuesday and Wednesday. Very deep upper level low. By the way, start noticing up here over Greenland some of these purples. That is much, much higher than normal heights, and this is indicative of that blocking pattern, that high latitude blocking over places like Greenland or Iceland or northeastern Canada, with the NAO and AO dropping way down into negative territory. Now, let's move forward. This is Monday. Now we get into Tuesday, and here we go. A very powerful upper level system, and there will be indeed a strong storm, low pressure area headed into the Great Lakes. It may end up being the primary low, in that a secondary low is liable to form along the mid-Atlantic coastline. When you see blocking up to the north like this, that often results in this kind of a pattern, a secondary storm system to form over the mid-Atlantic coastline. So that primary low, the main low, if you will, goes up towards the Great Lakes. And again, we'll see in a moment on the surface forecast map, there'll be a strong high over southeastern Canada for next week's event, Tuesday, Wednesday. And the difference in pressure between that strong high over southeastern Canada and the Great Lakes Midwest primary low will be intense, leading to potentially damaging winds in much of the northeastern part of the nation. Now, let's move forward here rather quickly here. Again, this Tuesday, Wednesday system does not usher in that intense cold I've been talking about. That is out in this part of North America by the time we get in the latter part of next week. We're looking at a week away, but look at this right here showing up over Greenland. A very impressive high latitude blocking type of pattern here. And again, we're getting those signals from the NAO and the AO slipping deeper and deeper into negative territory. Eventually, this intense cold is likely to work its way into the eastern states. It starts off, we'll start to hear about very low temperatures, western Canada, north central, northwestern U.S. As I said, eventually this upper level low does likely expand into the south and east. This is all the way now the middle part of January 16th to be specific, and just take a look at that over Greenland, over northern Canada. That is some impressive high latitude blocking setting up for the middle and likely the latter part of January. And indeed, a lot of that cold air, intense cold, looks like it'll probably make its way south and east. Hard to stop its advance. It's very, very dense air that will first hit western Canada, then north central, northwestern U.S., and likely work its way all the way to the eastern seaboard in one form or another. Well, now let's take a look at the surface forecast maps, again using the 0Z run of the GFS. Two systems today, one sliding south and east across the northwestern part of New England, southeastern part of Canada, another one moving off the mid-Atlantic coastline. Relatively weak, may cause a rain or snow shower in the mid-Atlantic region over the next several hours, but then these tend to phase together right here, intensification right here, moving up to the north and east. Ultimately becomes a pretty strong storm system over the northwest Atlantic. And here we go into the day on Saturday. In its wake, there will be a pretty cold air mass in place on Friday, heading into the upcoming weekend. And here is beginning stages of that weekend event for the northeastern part of the nation. This is Friday morning, causing some snow over the south central states, the Central Plains, for example, rain farther south of there. Then we get into Friday night and Saturday, and here we go. We likely see precipitation arriving in the DC metro region late morning, midday, probably early to mid-afternoon into Philly, and then by late afternoon into New York City. Liable to start out as snow or maybe a mix of snow and rain, as a mix of snow and ice, again initially in the DC, Philly, New York City metro regions, but that mixture will tend to cap any kind of snowfall accumulations in this weekend event. Go well to the north and west, and snow accumulations will kind of ramp up rather quickly. By the way, I have put out preliminary snowfall estimates for Philly, DC, and New York City at arcfieldweather.com. Take a look at the forecast for those three metro regions. Notice high pressure here over southeastern Canada. That indeed will help to keep the cold air around at least for a while, especially in the interior sections of the mid-Atlantic and the northeast U.S. And probably the heaviest snow in this event liable to be across from south central PA across northeastern PA in those higher elevation locations. Enough warmer will come in at the surface to cause a mixture. DC, Philadelphia, and even New York City, it appears, capping snowfall accumulations in those metro areas. That passes on by. There may be some lingering precipitation into the day on Sunday, primarily likely in the form of snow when you get north of the Mason-Dixon line. Maybe a little bit of rain mixed in as that slides off to the east and northeast. Then we get into the next system here showing up on Tuesday morning. Look at that already, 985 millibar low here, sliding up northward across the Midwest towards the Great Lakes. And notice strong high pressure here over southeastern Canada by midday on Tuesday. That produces a couple of effects. Strong high pressure here, strong low pressure here. The difference in pressure between these two systems will be very, very strong, and that will, you can see that reflected here by these tight isobars. These black lines represent lines of equal pressure. Very powerful winds, potentially damaging winds. I think this entire area from the Midwest, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S., power outage, unfortunately, on the table with this system. Now, another factor, with this high locked in over southeastern Canada, that ensures some cold air in the lower levels at the beginning of this event. So don't be surprised if even the I-95 corridor starts off initially with snow or maybe a mixture of snow and ice, even though eventually rain will be the predominant precipitation type, and heavy rain indeed. Go out a little farther in time and talking about interior accumulating snows and heavy rainfall ultimately across the I-95 corridor and much of the coastal sections here. And again, initially there may be enough cold air, especially at the surface, for some snow or ice, even to the big cities, DC, Philadelphia, for example. But look at the 1038 millibar low come Tuesday evening over southeastern Canada, 1038 high over southeastern Canada, 983 low. These winds could be potentially damaging, especially across the coastal sections here, let's say from the Mid-Atlantic to New England. and let's go all the way into the middle part of next week. And again, this system, as powerful as it will be, does not bring in that intense cold. That may wait for yet another system. Let's go quickly through the end of next week and into the subsequent weekend. And here we have yet another system sliding across the east, maybe even warm enough for rain at this particular time. But then that is the system that by the middle of January, and we're all the way up now till January 15th, 16th time frame, we could see these thicknesses here, 498 thickness, even lower across southwestern part of Canada. That is some intense cold here, starting to work its way south and east. And again, it first impacts Western Canada, north central U.S., northwestern U.S., and likely works its way, at least in one form or another, all the way south and east to the eastern seaboard. So a lot going on over the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned to arcfieldweather.com for updates over the next couple of days. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.